Hello everybody, welcome back to Modern Dentures. In this video I'm just going to set up some teeth. It's a full upper, it's not an actual job, this is just a demo case that I'm doing to show how I set teeth, because I think this is an important thing that a lot of technicians struggle with if they're doing a retry and they're trying to use the existing setup, and what makes it difficult is the amount of wax that's on there. So in this case I'm going to show you how I'd set up from scratch and the amount of wax that I'm using to set the teeth in position. Somebody asked me the other day, do I use bite blocks to set up the teeth? And I know a lot of technicians do this, and there are benefits to doing it that way because you've got the height of the tooth set, all the measurements of the bite block. So in theory you can just adjust the wax, put the teeth in, get them all in the correct position. However, the problem with it is the wax, the amount of wax that you've got on there makes a real mess, and it makes it so difficult to get the teeth in the right position because you're constantly fighting against the wax. And for somebody like me that's been doing it for years, I can kind of cope with that. However, if you're not setting up teeth on a daily basis and haven't done that for years, then it might be a bit of a struggle doing it. So a better way to do it is just start from scratch. Just take the measurements, just use some calipers to measure the height of the bite block. If you're not confident that you're going to get the teeth in the right position, you can use a matrix and things like that to get them positioned. For me, I tend to just eyeball it. It's probably the best way to learn how to do it, because you're learning how to set the teeth in the easiest way possible. Even if you don't get them in the right position, you can then just keep working at it until you get them in the right position, rather than struggling with excessive amounts of wax. And I see this when people are setting up, they almost do it like a bite block. So they put the base plate down and then they roll up a big thick piece of wax and put it around the ridge and then start trying to set the teeth in it. But they have to melt most of the wax away to get the teeth in the right position, and all that wax that they're melting away and removing is just getting in the way of being able to position the tooth, because you end up burying the tooth in the wax and then you can't see the position of the tooth because it's buried. The way that I do it, and I'll show you in this video how I do it, put the base plate down, put a very small amount of wax on the base plate, a little bit of wax on the tooth, and then join the two together. And the reason you do it like that is because then the teeth are attached to the wax nice and strong. If you just melt the wax on the model side and then put the acrylic tooth onto it, that wax will cool down before it sticks to the tooth. Then when you come to do the try-in, the teeth will start falling off. So any dentists that are out there that are doing try-ins and they're putting the try-ins in, the bite's out a little bit, and as the patient bites, all the teeth just fall off, it's usually because of this, that the technician hasn't adhered the wax to those teeth. So if that is happening with you, I advise you to share this video with the technicians so they can see firsthand exactly what I mean in terms of prepping the tooth with some wax before setting up with it. I think the mindset of the technician when they're setting up, all the dentists, whoever's doing the setup of the teeth, of putting the wax on, is almost like you're imagining the denture shape and size, and you're trying to then put the teeth into it as it would be on the denture. But that's difficult doing it that way, as I said before, with all the wax involved. You really want to strip it back, so it's almost like you're putting the absolute minimum amount of wax on just to tag that tooth into position, and then when you get a few teeth on, you can actually see, you can look at it and you can see whether they're lined up by seeing the whole tooth and not just a bit that's outside of the wax, if that makes sense. It'll make more sense when you see me set up. Anyway, let's get on with the video. So just quickly, a little bit about putting strengtheners in. Don't set it right on top of the ridge where the teeth are going. Make sure you're putting it in the palate there. Don't heat it up too much. Just want to heat it a little bit. Just enough that it will sort of slightly soften the wax, just to hold it so it's not moving. You don't have to heat it, you can just push it in. But once you have positioned it, just melt some wax. Make sure the wax is really hot. And just run it over so that it falls off like that. I forgot my own rule there. Let's do that again. So make sure the wax is nice and hot and just run it on one side. Let it cool down a little bit before you run it around the other side. Otherwise the wire will fall off. Also, something I forgot to say, if you're using new teeth and they're coming straight off the slide, make sure there's no red wax on there. The card wax is a really sticky wax, it's a soft wax, and it needs to be removed before the teeth are set up. So again, if you're getting trials back from the laboratory and you can see this red wax around the fit surface of the tooth and the teeth are falling off, this is why, because that wax is so soft that it means if you leave it on the tooth, when you set up with it, the teeth are just going to fall off because the wax isn't strong enough to hold the teeth. So that needs to be cleaned off thoroughly before you add your normal setup wax. So I've put a bit on the tooth, and I'm going to put a little bit on the other one. Look how I've just set that, brilliant. Just melting the wax on that other one. Now this is how I set up the two centrals, just roughly getting them into the right position. Now obviously if this is on an Arctic, this is where you'll check in, or you could be using, you know, dividers or something like that to mark your measurements, and then you set your position of your teeth. And you're trying to look at it through all dimensions. So the central, not just the centre there, but the centre with the palate and the angle of the teeth here. And then a hot knife just to touch the teeth. Again, don't do too much because if you melt the wax they'll just fall off. And when I've done those two, I'll put a little bit more wax around just to build these areas up. And again, I put the next two teeth on. I don't put both laterals on, I put the lateral and the canine. And see how easy it is to place them? Now these have been set up before, so the teeth have been adjusted. Obviously if this canine was a little bit too close, I'd be taking a little bit off of the back. And decide now you want to set up. So this one, it's been set up behind. Obviously I'll set them up relatively straight. But if I wanted this to look nice and natural, that's the sort of thing I would do. So with this one, I'd put it slightly behind the central, like that. Or twist it a little bit so it's more forward in that aspect. And these are the nicer ones to do, the laterals, to just do a little bit of a twist on there rather than the centrals. You can do, depending on the patient's normal setup. Let's do that side and then we'll add some teeth on this side. So as you can see, what I've said before is you're not burying these teeth in loads of wax. You're literally just touching that, just to get it into the position you want. There's nothing holding this tooth. There's hardly anything there at this stage. Just ever so lightly. To be able to get them into position. Then you might want to put a little bit more on, just to tack it in place like that. And on that one, and then if you want to, you can go back to the other ones so that you're getting them symmetrical, and you're trying to get this arch even. You're always looking at the middle bit, looking at all the different angles. And what I like to do is just put my finger over the front as well. When the lips covering the teeth, it gives you an idea what it's going to look like in the mouth, and then you can look at it and go, actually this canine's a little bit high. So in that sort of situation, see how difficult that is to pull off? That's because I put wax on this side of the tooth as well as on there, and I've got no red wax. So I just melt that down a little bit. Because it's a little bit high this time, I'm just going to push it in a little bit more. So it's not quite as high. I feel like this one's a little bit long now. But I'm going to leave it. I'm going to get the next 2 teeth on. And I generally do this, putting 2 teeth on at a time, unless I'm pushed for time, and then I'll put 4 on. So in this example, if I put 4 on, put them all on at once like that, and then I'll start changing them. So how easy it is to move them and just get them in just the right position, or the position that you want them in, because there's no wax getting in the way. And in this situation there's not quite enough, and I didn't put any wax on these ones, which is okay when you're setting up in this sort of situation, because you can flood the wax in afterwards. What I mean by that, if this was all buried in wax and you're pushing them in, that's when they don't stick. Because you're just tacking them on the outside, then to fill this up, you can then just drip your wax in, and that molten wax is going to stick once they're balanced in place. It's so much easier just to soften the wax, tweak them, get them lined up, get your curves, etc. This one's a little bit high, so we can just push it down a little bit. It's so much easier to manipulate and get the teeth in the right position, as opposed to if you've got a big bit of wax. So this is, I'll show you, this is what I see people do it. A big bit of wax like this, and then to set the teeth up you have to melt all this wax. And then when you start putting the teeth in, it all squidges out and you get wax everywhere. But most importantly, you're then struggling to get the teeth in the right position because there's just too much wax. I'm just creating problems for myself with that. And if I was to take one of these teeth off, the amount of wax that's there is actually increased the height that I would want the teeth on this side, and the angle of them. Yeah, it's just not the best way to do it. Sometimes you have to, don't get me wrong, sometimes there's a lot of bone loss and all the teeth that you're using are quite short, and you might have to build it up a little bit. But the important thing is that you don't build it up too much. Keep it nice and small. Again, like this. Just pop them into place. And go in. sometimes. So like this one, there's too much wax here, or possibly too much tooth. Let's take it off, repositioning it, and now it's got a better curve going down here. This one doesn't look too bad, but this one's not quite right. This one we need a little bit more of an angle on it. So with the canine, it sits a bit more proud than the lateral, and then the 5 is more upright, and so the 4 tends to go somewhere between the two. So it's a little bit more proud at the neck than the 5, and then as the 6 goes in a bit more, and then finally the 7 a little bit more again. And you're looking at these buccal cusps to line up. You're also looking at the angle of the tooth. So look at the angle I've put that 5 compared to that 4. So the way I'd correct that, just soften the wax around it and then just move it slightly. You can't do that if the whole thing's buried in wax. So much more difficult. And you'll just need to reposition this one. Now this one is a little bit short, and I think the bone might dip down a little bit, or maybe the tooth's been trimmed a little bit too much. Just put a little sliver in there, soften that up. And that's just enough then just to bring the height of that tooth. There we go. And now I'm looking back at this side now, and these sort of like look like they're leaning in a little bit too much. The wax is still soft enough that I can just tweak it. You're never going to get them perfectly symmetrical. Well, you could, I suppose, if you spend enough time on it. However, you don't want them perfectly symmetrical, because then it doesn't look natural. There's nothing worse than seeing this perfectly straight, symmetrical, white teeth, in my opinion. Unless that's what the patient wants, and sometimes they do. But generally, the patients tend to be happier if they look natural. And this is the thing, you know, let your technician know what your patient wants. If they want them perfectly straight and lined up, and you can usually tell when they're asked, you know, when they're deciding what colour. For patients saying they want white teeth, and they're choosing A1s or B1s or HB1s or something like that, like really white teeth, they probably want them set really straight as well. Anyway, there we go. That's how I set the teeth up. Now let's just do a montage of me waxing up.
Simon's got his wax pot hot, his tools all nice and clean, fixing grins with gaps so wide like nothing you've ever seen. He lines up teeth on pinkish gums, a smile to be revealing, turning folks from slightly grimmed, strangely more appealing. All in a day's work, you see, with artistry and feeling. He lines up teeth on pinkish gums, a smile to be revealing, turning folks from slightly grimmed, strangely more appealing. All in a day's work, you see, with artistry and feeling.
There we go. So just a few notes on that. I struggled a little bit at the end because it's so warm today. The wax is just staying soft, and trying to clean it up I also got a little bit too much over the teeth as well when I was waxing it up. You know, sometimes it's a bit quicker if you can control the build-up of the wax a little bit better. But yeah, probably out of practice a little bit. Tend not to do many try-ins these days. But I do set teeth quite often. Chair side, if they're not quite right, I can get in, stick my wax knife in, move them around a little bit, get them in a nicer position. But I don't do much finishing because we usually do that again at the fit stage. I wouldn't normally put the detailing in like that at the try-in stage. I normally just leave that for when we're processing the denture. We seal it down and then we put the detail in, and then we're putting the masks, etc. in it when we're investing. But yeah, well, it come out all right. It's not perfect, as I say. It's just a demo job that we're doing. And again, setting the teeth took me a little bit longer than normal. It's not what I usually use. I don't know what these were. I think they were Venaris. I normally use Enigma Life. It's just easier when you're using something that you're used to. Again, I was using this wax knife that I don't normally use. But yeah, well, that's taken me an hour. No, not an hour, about 3/4 of an hour. Which again is a little bit longer than it would normally take if you're doing it every day. It's a little bit quicker. And also if it's cooler as well on a hot day like this, it's just really difficult working with the wax because it's so soft and it takes longer to cool down as you're melting it, things like that. But yeah, hope you found this video useful and something interesting in there. If you did, give us a like and a subscribe and all that stuff. And I'll see you in the next one.